now we're getting some information after a while. We have time to find out just how bad the collateral damage has been. Here's just a few cases. The pandemic erased 2 decades of progress in math and reading. See, right away, I got to say, this pisses me off. I see these headlines all the time. The pandemic didn't do that. The way we handled the pandemic did that. The pandemic certainly was a thing.
I 100% agree with Bill Maher there. It wasn't necessarily the global virus that devastated society. Yes, it played its part. Yes, people lost their lives. Yes, it should have been taken seriously. But it was the way we handle it that has caused the long-term devastating effects to people's personal lives and to society and on a global scale. And I do think us as citizens have our part to play in it. We have our blame because we were so willing to lay down our freedoms under the disguise of for your own safety. But now look, I understand when the global virus first happened, nobody really knew what to do. And I too followed the directions of the government when the first lockdowns hit, because we were unsure. So I can understand some mistakes being made because we didn't know how bad or how devastating or how deadly this virus was going to be. But almost 2 years of mistake after mistake after mistake, policies and mandates and rules that really just didn't make any sense, and all this new revelation and stuff that's coming to light, like the Pfizer data drop, and them coming out with the news that we weren't really sure if the virus, we weren't really sure if the pokes were really going to stop the spread of this global virus. The reason and the purpose of incentivizing people, I'll use that word, and that's a kind word for me to use, incentivize people, not i.e. threaten to take their livelihood and their jobs away, but incentivize people to get the poke, was to stop the spread of the virus, to only find out that they were kind of iffy on the details when it came to that. 2 decades of lost education from the younger generations. Who knows the long-term devastating effects that's going to have on societies and people's personal lives. Not to mention the loss of wages, the loss of livelihood, the loss of jobs and incomes, businesses being completely and utterly destroyed, the offing themselves rates going up, mental health skyrocketing, substance abuse skyrocketing, domestic violence, child abuse skyrocketing. The devastating effects that the lockdowns and the mandates and the way that the government handled this, I really do think it went far and beyond the effects that the virus had itself. And again, I'm not saying that people did not lose their lives because of this virus. But again, with the information we have now, it was mostly the elderly and people who had issues in the first place, like obesity or obesity-related diabetes or other complications. We should have protected them. We should have protected the elderly, and we should have protected the sick, not isolate the healthy. But anyway, let's continue.
The pandemic certainly was a thing. But let's not just say the pandemic, because it was not written in stone that we had to handle it the way we did. ACT scores are the lowest in 30 years. Anxiety and depression way up. The body mass index doubled for kids 2 to 19.
Interesting. Isn't that interesting? Again, with the information that we have, at least the mainstream is allowing us to discuss this a little bit more openly, even here on YouTube, that the healthier the individual was, the better it was going to be for you if you caught the virus, right? If your weight was under control, if you were exercising, if you were fit, if you were eating right, if you were getting enough sleep, if your anxiety and your stress levels were low. If you got the virus, you had a better chance of not getting severely sick or getting sick at all, right? So it's funny how the thing that we should have been doing, which is to boost our immune system and get healthy as a society, the mandates made us more susceptible to the virus. Isn't that kind of crazy? Isn't it a little bit of cray-cray? People got more obese. People got more overweight. People got more out of shape. The stress and anxiety levels of not being able to work, being around your fucking kids 24 hours, realizing your marriage is falling apart, and being scared to death that you're going to die. Thanks to the CNN death ticker that magically went away once Biden became president. The thing that they should have been telling us what to do is to get healthy is the thing they did the opposite of. They closed the gyms. They closed the churches. They stopped people from going to the AA meetings. They stopped people from being with their loved ones. They stopped people from being with their support system. The thing that it could have helped you mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually combat the virus if you caught it, they kept you from doing that. Isn't that kind of weird? But anyway, let's continue.
For kids 2 to 19, drug overdose deaths, murders way up, inflation at a 40-year high, domestic violence increased. Oh, and my favorite, car crashes.
I don't know how car crashes would increase, maybe stress or the lack of sleep, but the murder rate going up. It seems like the crime rate hasn't gone down since the global virus. It just seems like crime is increasing and increasing and increasing. Have you guys noticed that? It is weird. It seems like ever since the global virus, people have just lost their freaking minds. I can't wait to in 30, 50 years when they do a study on this and see why that is happening. Besides, these liberal states just allowing criminals to keep being released onto the streets and demoralizing and defunding the police, it seems like crime has steadily been climbing since the global virus and since the lockdowns. Anyway, let's continue.
Car crashes. They couldn't figure this out. Like way, way, way up. And finally, I love this. This is the expert said, you know what it is? People just went fucking mental. They just went nuts. They're like, I'm home. The fucking kids are here all the time. My stupid husband is here all the time. I'm just going to take it out on the highway. And they did.
Kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense. It seems like people have gone fucking mental. I don't know. Again, it's with the crime rates again. It's like people have lost their minds. Like something's in the air, something's in the water, or maybe it is really directly related to people being locked down for almost 2 years. I mean, it depends on what state you're in or what country you're in. A place like California, it was pretty much locked down for 2 years, but let's continue.
What you don't have is the benefit of the alternative scenarios to see how they would have come out, to be able to judge whether what did happen was a lesser evil than other options that would have unfolded. And so suppose...
I'm sorry, I have to call that out. That is total BS. That is total 100% bullshit. Neil. We have the information out now. Most people who would have caught the virus would have been healthy. 98 point what, 99 point what, especially in children, most people who caught it would have survived it. This was unnecessary. We already have the information that Pfizer have come out and admitted to say that we never actually said it would stop the spread. We were a little bit iffy in the details on that. So we do know that we did wrong. That if we would have just did what the textbooks of what medical students learn in school is that you isolate the sick, not the healthy. If we would have gone with that, we would have been better off. Neil. For a genius, you're kind of an idiot, but let's continue.
Actually we do, because other countries handled it differently. Sweden didn't handle it differently. Some of the places with the lowest vaccination rates turned out to have the best results.
With really low population densities.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, yes, there are different factors. There are.
Yes, but that matters.
Yes, of course it matters.
It's sort of a different factor.
You just said...
I went through an elevator in New York City to 15 people.
Okay,
right
but
here.
you just said that we can't make any judgments because we don't live in an alternative universe where America handled it differently. And I'm saying other places handled it differently. That does matter.
I mean, Neil is getting really emotional. Like... liberals and progressives usually do when they feel like they're losing the argument. But let's continue.
I think it's a legitimate conversation to have. You remember there was talk of herd immunity and how we get there at the outset, and people were shouted down for even raising that prospect. I'm not the scientist you are, but in retrospect,
they shouted down the idea that it might have escaped from a lab.
Right.
That was somehow racist,
right.
As opposed to somehow if you believed that it came from the wet markets, you were a Democrat, and if you believed it came from a lab, you were a Republican. This is ridiculous.
Yes, it is very absurd. It's very absurd. Yes, herd immunity. And that study that came out of Israel saying that if you got the global virus and you had you gain immunity from that immunity was stronger than the immunity that you would get from the poke. That paper came out long before that the mandates and the lockdown ended. We had information. We had other alternatives. We could have looked at other countries, and the government did not do that. Why? I don't know. But blood is on their hands, and they need to be held accountable. Not, we trying our best. No, that's not good enough. That's definitely not good enough. Anyway, that was it, guys. That was a short clip from Bill Maher and Neil deGrasse Tyson. I can never really say his name. He went kind of viral like a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't get a chance to react to it. This is not the first interview he had talking about the global 2-year virus. He was on another podcast where he got, again, very defensive and very emotional and was very, very arrogant.
Oh, your own body.
If you want to get an abortion, get an abortion. If I want to get the vaccine, I get to choose. So you can't force. If I can't force you to get an abortion, you shouldn't be able to force me to get
Because it's not about you. It's about people you interact with, and that's the social contract of public health.
We don't even know if the vaccine worked or not at the time.
Yes, that's what the trials are, dude. That's why these trials. Are you missing data out there?
But let me ask you a question. Are we saying only one type of scientists are right?
No, we're saying that the system in place.
The 16,000 that signed that.
No. The system in place to test vaccines. Yeah. There's an entire system that's in place. That with review boards and all of this,
and the average
that's in place. Now what you can say is, I have a better idea than all these review boards and all these agencies and the CDC. I have a better idea. Here's what you should do, and that would have made everything better. Okay, you can put forth that idea, but what I'm saying is, in a case where you can contaminate someone else, it's not about you. It's about the collective health.
You're assuming because somebody can take the vaccine, won't get COVID, which, by the way, I don't need to play the clips for you to see it, where everybody said, hey, if you get it, you're not going to get, if you take the vaccine, you're not going to get a Rachel Maddow, Joe Biden. I can give you Fauci. I can give you, and you've seen these clips before. It's not like you've never seen it before.
Yeah, what happened
They were wrong.
And there's been other videos out there. It was another interview he did with Joe Rogan where he just was like very, very arrogant.
Scientists, we've concluded that humans are catastrophically warming the Earth. Response: that conflicts with what I want to be true, so it must be false.
Well,
that is the cherry picking of science.
It is the cherry picking of science, but the global warming thing is very much connected to a certain type of ideology. A certain type of person who thinks of themselves.
It doesn't matter to me.
No nonsense. A person who thinks of themselves.
It doesn't matter to me. If it's still not a problem that people are climbing, it's that they're leaving waste. You don't stop the climbers, you tax them at some level so that now you have cleanup crews that come up after them.
Yeah, but it's
there's solutions. But there's solutions.
It's incredibly difficult to bring anything back.
So? You tax them, you make it worth it.
You understand, like, they have to leave the bodies up there, right? You know that. They can't bring them back.
That's what I heard.
Big difference between cars and human shit that's left on the side of a mountain. I think the real problem, too, is I think it's
if you value mountain climbing and you want to keep doing it, then you solve the problem. This is what engineers do.
Well, is it that?
It's pure. It's just money, dude. It's just money.
So you have to, because they don't have enough data. They don't have nearly the amount of data. Google has billions.
What is Google giving you that Apple Maps isn't?
That seems intrusive. Certainly,
that's intrusive. Well, only because it's pregnancy. It's intrusive in every way.
No, because
don't tell me it's not intrusive because you want to buy Nikes.
Sending you physical things. There's not just something that appears on your Google feed that you can quickly glance over.
And it's kind of that thing where people have been told their whole lives that they're super smart, they're a genius, and they're a scientist, and scientists are put on pedestals like they're some fucking demigods. And so they can't do no wrong. That I'm too smart to fall for it. I'm too smart to be fooled. And plus, he has an ideology he has to protect. I don't know much about this Neil guy, but all I know is my entire life I've been told he's some sort of like mad genius scientist or something like that. He's always put on a pedestal with accolades after accolade after accolade, after standing ovation after standing ovation. And maybe he deserves all of that. I'm not saying he's not intelligent, but there's a quote, and I don't know where this quote comes from, but it rings true, that intelligence without wisdom is dangerous. So just because you're intelligent doesn't mean that you're wise. And just because you're intelligent doesn't mean that you're immune to biases or cult-like or tribal-like thinking. And just because you're intelligent doesn't mean you can't be bought and sold either. And actually that is even more dangerous, because you gain the trust of the people and then get bought and sold, and the people just, because they have a history of trusting you, they just continue to blindly follow you and do so, right? We've seen other scientists talk about this, other philosophers, other people, researchers, doctors, people in the field talk about how tribal and cultish the scientific community can be, and how idealistic, or how they are hooked up on their ideology instead of actual science. Science, medical science, scientific research should always and forever be questioned, because that is the scientific method, is to be questioned and to have pushback. And people weren't allowed to do that.